Hello everyone, Ace here, and today I've decided to have yet another look at some video game history, and in the process answer the question, what exactly made Command & Conquer great?
Reporting was not exactly it seemed more like
Upgrade complete. Welcome back, Commander.
First released all the way back in 1995 as the first entry of the now legendary Command & Conquer franchise, Command & Conquer, aka Command & Conquer Tiberian Dawn, stands to this day as one of the most important titles within the entirety of the RTS genre. It is, without any exaggeration, a true landmark within video game history. And thanks to an HD remaster, footage of which is being used in the background of this video, the game is still thoroughly enjoyed even to this day. But to understand why this is the case, let's talk about what made the game great. And the first thing that helped make the game great was the developers' experience with one of their previous titles, namely Dune 2. Dune 2 is another game that is absolutely worthy of getting its own video one day, as it was the first example of what we would today consider to be a base-building RTS. It was the game that first laid the ground rules for what that genre would be. But it was also a game that could very much be improved upon, and Westwood took the lessons of Dune 2 to heart, creating a Dune 2 wishlist of sorts for their next game. A game that would introduce into the realm of PC one of the most important innovations period when it comes to the RTS genre. Which brings me to the next thing that helped make Command & Conquer great. That being, it was the first major RTS game to have a context-sensitive mouse cursor on PC. What do I mean? Well, when you place the mouse cursor over an enemy, your units automatically know to attack that enemy. And if you place the mouse cursor over empty space, the units know to move there. And yes, the first major PC RTS game to have this as a feature was Command & Conquer. Now, for what it's worth, it is of note that there is a version of Dune 2 that had a context-sensitive mouse cursor. The problem is that was for the Sega Genesis version of the game. Of course, it's still a major innovation there as well, and yet another great example of why that game deserves its own video, yet the act of porting that now standard feature over to the PC, something so basic and universal to the genre, more than merits itself as a special reason as to why Command & Conquer is great, and why it was an absolute game changer in comparison to the RTS games on PC that came before it. But there are still plenty of other things to talk about that helped make Command & Conquer great. Another thing worth bringing up is the sheer amount of effort that went into making this game immersive, to the tune that even the installation process was utilized in such a way as to try to immerse the player into the experience, by pretending that the player had accidentally acquired a real piece of military software and had installed it onto their system. They even did this for the later N64 port of the game as well, which yes, was approaching a certain degree of silliness, but the sheer fact that even the installation of the game was being utilized in a way to specifically immerse the player into the experience truly did show that the developers of Westwood deserve a special degree of praise for the effort they put into their games. Speaking of immersion and the way they were going about it, another thing that helped make the game great was how it was one of the few success stories when it came to FMV-style cutscenes. Considering the fact that Westwood was trying to immerse the player into the fantasy of them somehow acquiring by accident actual military software and ordering around actual troops, in order to try to sell that illusion, Westwood seems to have agreed that the best way to do that for the cutscenes would be to make them live action, which presented its own unique challenges. Live action cutscenes have a reputation for being rather campy. For what it's worth, there is a little bit of camp to the cutscenes of the original Command & Conquer. However, it is also very clear that they are some of the best FMV cutscenes ever created as well. Not quite the level of, say, some of the later Tex Murphy games, but definitely definitely a world of difference in comparison to most FMV cutscenes. And there is a very specific reason here, and that reason brings me to another thing that helped make the game great. Specifically a person, Joseph David Kukin, better known to you and me as Kane. Kane as a character is Command & Conquer. He is an absolute genius when it comes to strategy and scheming. He is every bit the dangerous opponent that the story needs him to be when you're the GDI. And he is every bit the skilled tactician and leader you need him to be when you're within the Brotherhood of Nod. And he has a personality to match his wit as well. It's not difficult to see why the character has a cult of personality throughout the games. But a great part of the reason why he was portrayed so well is the fact that Joseph Kukin was a professional actor and director. And this of course helps explain why the acting and FMV cutscenes in general for the game were cut above most of the competition. Yes, most of the actors in Command & Conquer were amateurs, but they were led by a professional director, giving them a significant advantage and allowing them to accomplish much more than could otherwise be expected. There is one voice actor, however, who deserves his own special spotlight, though the reason is not for his voice acting, legendary though it may be as well. That particular individual is the next thing that helped make this game great. Frank Klepacki. The man who voiced the commando in the game just so happened to also be one of the greatest music composers in video game history. A man who has created music that is the envy of the video game industry. And while Command & Conquer isn't quite the game that would have his true magnum opus, it is still packed with absolute bangers from beginning to end. Act on Instinct, No Mercy, CNC Thing, Mechanical Man, March to Doom, Airstrike. All of these are songs that are utterly iconic to fans of the RTS genre. As a result of all of these things combined, the original Command & Conquer was a revolutionary RTS game which included novel features that have since become utterly standard within the genre, while at the same time it was a blast to play because it was developed by people that had as much experience within the genre as anyone at that time. It was a game that was pushing the very boundaries of what could be done to make it as immersive an experience as possible. It utilized a professional director and actor to help lead the other actors into producing some of the better FMV cutscenes of the era. And on top of all of that, it had absolutely fantastic music, which was produced by one of the greatest composers of all time within video game history. It is no wonder in that context that this game became a success. But I do believe there is one final piece to the puzzle that needs to be brought up now. The last thing that helped make Command & Conquer great was how it laid down the foundation for the Command & Conquer setting, as well as the franchise in general. Considering how beloved the Command & Conquer franchise is to this very day, despite there being no new releases in many years, it is clear to see that what was created first all the way back in 1995 was truly special. It was a game that Westwood indeed should be proud to present. With that in mind, this has been Ace, and I hope you'll agree when I say that Command & Conquer is great.